Hello and welcome to Fanalytics. We're back with the weekend wrap up for Gameweek 14, and the league is kind of shaping up to, its final kind of midway point just before the World Cup. We've got two more interesting game weeks, but this game week, some interesting results to say the least, right?
A couple of great results for maybe neutral fans.
Mm-hmm.
A few kind of wild cards in there. But yeah, but a lot of what we've kind of been trending towards this season as well with some of these teams, which we'll get into.
Yeah, it's almost like it's no surprise because now the season started, you kind of know what the team's all about. But it's almost like if this is last season, it's a different story.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit more kind of affirmation to things that we thought might be happening. Yeah, I thought I'd throw that out there. I might have peaked too early.
Get your thesaurus out. All right, let's start with the first game. Liverpool 1, Leeds 2. Van Dijk first game loss at Anfield, which is always nice to see as a Man United fan. What do you think of the match, Matt?
I mean, and this is exactly what we were just talking about in the intro. Like, it still is a surprise. It still is a surprise. Liverpool losing a game at home doesn't happen often, no matter who the opposition. And Leeds have been struggling for form themselves. So this did come out a bit out of left field. But I mean, there was so many poor performances from Liverpool in this one. The guy I want to talk about first is Harvey Elliott. And I know he's not really a natural centre midfielder. Mm-hmm. He's been utilised there this season, and to be fair to him, he has had some good games in central midfield this season. But this performance was an absolute shocker. 0 tackles or interceptions, no shot creating actions, no goal creating actions, no key passes, just the one progressive pass. And I mean, I could have picked other things here. He had no passes entering the final third. He had no passes entering the opposition penalty area. It was, I mean, this is just an abysmal performance from a central midfielder.
Yeah.
Obviously not all, midfielders are going to be creative. They have to do, more of the ball winning work.
Mm-hmm.
So to have someone that contributes basically nothing over 59 minutes, I mean, and that's the thing. This isn't like an off the bench performance. This is from the start for an hour of this game, and it's it's kind of been the story with Liverpool this season. It's just every week there just seems to be a bunch of guys that are just not playing at their highest level, and for the eye test, you could talk about Van Dijk as well.
Yeah,
because his reactions in that second goal, the winning goal for Leeds, it was awful. I have never seen him defend so poorly. I mean, the ball was there to be won. He did not commit at all. He just let Somerville drift past him and tap it past Alisson. I mean, I know there's been the rumor that he's not really all in. He's sort of trying to prevent injury ahead of the World Cup, which I wasn't really buying into.
Yeah, but then after that,
it's hard to watch that goal and tell me that's a guy 100% committed. It's a bit wrong, and for a team that's prided itself on its mentality over the past few years, that's a huge concern.
Yeah, I agree with you on that word, mentality. Klopp mentality, heavy metal football. All these years we've seen them sort of perform in the same way, regardless loss, win, draw. It's always been the same football. But now it's just that edge, isn't it? It's that kind of, especially a game. This is a Leeds team who are playing with a kind of a press, sort of, dualistic nature. This is not a low block specialist team that you frustrate teams like Liverpool in the past. This is a team that can get at.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it does. Leeds do feel like a team that, hey, home game against Leeds, that might not be the worst thing for a team that's sort of trying to find itself, certainly in an attacking sense. Liverpool, I think they're still trying to I think they've still got questions. I think they're still figuring out how to use Nunes completely, because there's a proper talent there. There is a proper talent, and the way he can drive forward with the ball, his skill, he's got good close control. He can be utilized more than just as a target man, number 9, kind of leading the line. He is someone that can drop in. He can play a Firmino type role, not to that level. He is still more of a forward than a midfielder, but I just think they're trying to figure it out on the fly. And when results are against you, and that mentality that you're talking about, that drops, you lose confidence. It's very hard to get it back.
It's interesting. It's like probably first season that Klopp's trying different formations. Like in this game, trying diamond. They've been trying 4-2-2-2. I think he's trying desperately to get something to work with all the players he has fit. And I saw an interesting fact that his record this season was worse than when Ollie got sacked in his last season. I think just one less game he's won compared to Ollie. Now I'm not saying he deserves a sack, because obviously he's won Champions League, he's done great stuff. But I'm just going to ask you, at what point do you think, if you're a Liverpool fan, would you give him the whole season, even though if their performance is like this, a bit sloppy, or would you?
Yeah, I think he will, and I think to a certain degree he's kind of tied to the club, so long as guys like Salah, Van Dijk are still there. I think Mane obviously left in the summer. I think if we see more of the core group leave, then Klopp will go as well. I think he's kind of earned that right where he can kind of decide.
Yeah, definitely.
And he doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to stick around for longer than necessary to kind of outstay his welcome. Like if he thinks that the club needs change, needs a light rebuild or whatever, then I think he will walk away. But he's in there for the season, for better or worse. I still do think Liverpool will improve. I just have to believe that the talent that's in that squad, that they will improve. And maybe post World Cup, maybe when that's not in the back of players' minds, maybe we do see a different Liverpool. But yeah, it's very inconsistent at the moment.
Yeah, and definitely, and even though they're doing quite well in Champions League, like Salah's top scorer, scored again midweek. Surprising that hasn't really gone well for them in the Premier League as such, but we'll see how it goes. But let's talk about Leeds. They've lost their last 4 games before this Liverpool match.
Something like they hadn't won in quite a while.
Yeah, it was looking quite daunting for Marsh, because we were singing praise for him at the beginning of the season. Had a slight dip, but it's a good win for him. Buys him some time, because obviously with the World Cup, it's always a worry if you go into bad form into that, because it's a big period for the board to think about it, get a new manager in.
It's kind of like a marker, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's kind of a point where you say that'd be a good time to change things if we need to. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, very happy that they got a win, get some points on the board. Obviously, it's against Liverpool, so I'm double happy. But one player I want to point out in this game particularly was Melia. 9 saves, which I think is the most saves in Premier League this season. 1.7 PSXG. He's conceded 1 goal, but he made some fantastic saves. I think 1 double save, if I can remember correctly. And this season, he's kind of been steady. I think last season there were a lot of errors in Leeds' defense. Sometimes Melia had some good games and then some bad games, but he's kind of steadied his performance, and he's a young keeper, so I think I
think the best thing, one of the best things that Bielsa done was just he put him straight in the team. He bought this young keeper for like the move to the Premier League, and he was very, very shaky at the beginning. And you're right, that did continue even into last season at times. But Bielsa never kind of wavered. There was never talk of like replacing him or anything like that. And I think that's important, particularly with because young goalkeepers do struggle generally. It's very, very difficult. It's the one position where I don't think goalkeepers start to hit their peak until their 30s a lot of the time.
True. It
So
reminds me of that
I,
De Gea when De Gea first came. Very
yeah,
weak, nimble.
it is, and you can tell he's a good shot stopper,
Mm-hmm.
and he has got that ball playing ability, which is so valued now.
Yep,
And yeah, games like this will help him because I do think he's a good player, and I think he'll get better.
definitely. I'm glad that Leeds have got this kind of core players that we can look forward to, and if they stay in the Premier League, it'll be quite exciting to watch.
Oh yeah, they got some really exciting young players. That Somerville as well.
Yeah, where
It's
did
good
he
to
come
see him.
from? Do you know? Just from the youth or?
Yeah, I think he was youth, and I remember hearing a lot about him, and then really didn't play at the start of the season. I don't know if he was carrying an injury or something, but there has been a bit of talk about him,
Hmm.
and they've got a bunch of these very, very exciting young players. Jesse Marsh, we love him on this show, and it's good. You're right; it is good to see him get a result because I love their style of football. I love the players they got. I just think I think that style of play does lend itself to a few hammerings every now and again, but
Yeah, similar to Southampton, right?
it also gives you a chance to go to Anfield and do this what they've done on Saturday. So I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about two teams that we do like at Fanatics, especially one, Brighton versus Chelsea. Brighton 4, Chelsea 1. This was a very interesting match, Potter's return, 2 own goals, and Brighton quite dominant, to be fair. Like, I expected a more even footing match. I don't know what you thought about it, but I thought Chelsea would be more in the game, but never seemed to
Yeah,
get a
this
fold.
this is a very wild result for a few reasons. It's and I'm not really sure how it's happened because Brighton have kind of been a little bit
Mm-hmm.
stop start under De Zerbi so far, and Chelsea have been pretty good under Potter, certainly defensively.
Yeah.
So conceding 4 goals like that, but there are 2 own goals in there, so it could just be one of those kind of freak games. Brighton obviously know Graham Potter very, very well. Maybe that played a part
Mm-hmm.
with them being sort of ready for Chelsea in this game. That's the only thing I can think of really as to why this result ended up as lopsided as it did.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Potter and Chelsea then, so far in his tenure?
Yeah, I think overall, if you compare the record to that of Tuchel, they've now played the same number of or managed the same number of Premier League games this season,
Mm-hmm.
and across the board, there's slight improvement: points per game, goals per game, goals against per game. And really, you look at something like the points per game and goals against per game has been skewed quite dramatically by this game against
Mm-hmm.
Brighton.
Yeah, true.
So, defensively they did get a lot better. But something that worries me is there's still a lack of consistency there. And I still look at the Chelsea team sheet like I did under Tuchel towards the end of his reign, and it's just like, what what's the shape here? And I get that
That's
that can
Potter's
work
style.
in your favor. Yeah, I get that can work in your favor, but it's just I think it lends itself to this inconsistency. If you are chopping and changing and trying to figure things out, and look, Sterling and Pulisic are not wing backs. I know he was able to utilize more attacking wing backs
Yeah,
at,
like Trossard and
Brighton, but I think those guys would put in more defensive shifts. Certainly, Solly March. He played at fullback. I think a few times a few years ago as well. So
yeah,
Sterling and Pulisic aren't going to put in much of a defensive shift.
no,
That's not their game. So I do wonder sometimes with some of those. But if we give him the benefit of the doubt, I think he's probably still figuring things out there, right?
yeah. I guess he's got that new manager bounce of sorts. I think the players are playing a bit more, let's say, happier, if that makes sense. But yeah, I agree with you. And I think this is a big, not a big criticism, but it's a criticism that Potter has had as well in his tenure at Brighton. I think the first few years, a lot of fans were saying they kept changing formations and they kept getting inconsistent results. I definitely think if you have a different team, a different formation every week, you're just not going to get the same results as a team that plays same team, same formation every week, getting
Of
used to the kind
course.
of patterns of play.
Yeah, because all of that stuff comes out of muscle memory.
Hmm.
You know where a player's going to be. Because it's just practiced relentlessly. Like you watch Arsenal now, players make passes they haven't even looked.
Yeah.
They just know where the guy is before the pass is made. And you're right, when you're chopping and changing, everything is just a little bit slower and it's more reactive.
So I do think like Potter obviously needs his own men in the team. He hasn't had a transfer window, of course. He also needs to. But do you think he's gonna get time to chop and change as much? Because obviously at Brighton he was just doing above the expectation. Here at Chelsea, the expectation is probably to title
Yeah, and,
challenge, right? So
and it's something that we've touched on before, that the scrutiny now is a lot bigger. At Brighton, he could afford to get things wrong, right? They could afford to go on, a month or two where they just don't really get the results and the performances are a bit below par. When that happens at Chelsea, all eyes are on you, and we thought things might be different in the post-Abramovich era in terms of Chelsea and managers, but it might not be. It might be exactly the same
it must be the
sort of
DNA.
approach. Yeah, it's Chelsea DNA, right?
It's in that water they drink.
But I don't think he will get that time in general. But look, the early signs are fairly encouraging.
Yeah,
This
definitely.
game aside, I'm happy to write this off as an aberration for now, because I think we've seen enough good stuff so far.
Yeah, true. And I guess what I want to talk about is similar comparison. It's Port 6 games and Deserbury, who's come in for 6 games now too. Obviously, the whole kind of wheel of managers have come through. Deserbury's obviously had a few hard games, obviously at Chelsea, Liverpool, City. So it does kind of skew results. But I think what they've been really lacking is goals per game. I think they were kind of flourishing under Potter in the first 6 games. They were scoring, they're creating chances. Under Zebri, you expect a new manager bounce, and he's kind of playing a similar system. He hasn't changed too much. Maybe they're a bit more playing out the back than Potter. But yeah, the goals are the one that they're not really getting results. They lost to Brentford. We were thinking Brighton might be challenging for Europe, or they might be going into that like top 6 space. But I think now I think the team has regressed a little bit, especially attacking wise. I think defensively
Yeah,
they're still solid.
to be fair, I felt that there would be a slight regression just because of how well Potter done. There's just bound to be, when that manager leaves, I just think there's bound to be a little bit of a slight depression, if you like, around the place. But if you watch the Brighton games, they're playing okay.
Yeah.
The football is good football, and it's largely the kind of football that they were playing under Potter. And let's remember that Graham Potter, that they weren't suddenly a
Took years.
top 10 side, overnight. You gotta. It takes time to get used to everything. But this is a great result. This buys you a bit of time in the figuring things out.
Especially when
honeymoon
like
phase.
the world is comparing you to this kind of great upcoming manager like Potter is.
Yeah, it's a tough act to follow.
Exactly. In terms of tough acts, Spurs are not making them easy this season, are they?
It's every week now, isn't it?
Yeah, Champions League game this week as well, right? Last minute.
Yeah, and it's I mean, look, they keep getting results. They keep getting results. They're third in the Premier League. They top the Champions League group. And yet a lot of the conversation is a bit doom and gloom around Tottenham at the moment, which I don't think is particularly fair when you take this on a results basis, which football ultimately will always be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely true. I would say I probably play devil advocate here. I guess they're saying it can't be sustained, right? The performance, the level of XG, even XG against, there's something not right at Spurs with the players they have and the manager they have.
The thing that it reminds me of is Liverpool, where at the back end of last season they kept going 1-0 down and winning games. And we talked about the mentality monsters, and we talked about, that's just what Liverpool do. Doesn't matter if they go 1-0 down, they still believe they're going to win the game. And I think Tottenham do have that belief. I think the fitness that has always been a big thing under Conte. It's not a surprise that they score a lot of late goals.
True.
They're still very fresh late in games where other teams can tire. I think that plays a big role as well. But I do think you're right where the sustainability of this, because we've seen it happen to Liverpool where the first game of the season they went 1-0 down as per usual, as they were at the back end of last season, but they didn't win the game.
Yep.
Okay, and then suddenly that little, call it invincibility or whatever you want to call it, there's a little chink in the armor, and then all of a sudden you're just a team that goes 1-0 down every week.
Yep.
You're not these mentality monsters. You're just a team that just has serious problems, certainly in the first half of games.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I think like term mentality monsters and going down and coming back every game shouldn't be coexisting. Mentality monster is like in a big game or some games one off, like let's say for example you had a winning streak, you were easily winning games, and in one game you had a game like this. Yeah, you've dug deep. But if it's every week and you're not carving up teams, it reminds me of like Mourinho and Oli under Man United.
Yeah.
We just some late wins and we're like, oh, Man United's back. But the performance will always come back, performance.
It was Emery at Arsenal as well. It was the same thing.
Yeah.
His first 4 months, I don't think we took the lead in a Premier League game. And yet we went on this like 16 match unbeaten run.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay, there is issues here.
Yeah.
Underlying. And don't get me wrong, no, I'm not referring to a Spurs side as mentality monsters going 2-0 down at Bournemouth.
Yeah.
That's there is something wrong there. You can't do that. But going back to what I was saying about Tottenham and the doom and gloom aspect, if you look at the points or the games where they've dropped points in the Premier League this season, Chelsea away, West Ham away, Arsenal away, Man United away, Newcastle at home. Now, that is 5 good teams there. And I know there's been some inconsistency. I know West Ham haven't started well, Chelsea a little bit up and down.
Mm-hmm.
But, Arsenal are playing brilliantly. And North London derbies tend to be won by the home sides.
Yeah.
So that's not egregious. United are in very, very good form. The only bad one in that list is you'd say Newcastle at home.
But even then,
just because it's at home. But yeah, Newcastle are playing great at the moment. They're going to be a top 6 side potentially at the end of this season. So when you look at that with Tottenham, every other game they've just gone and got 3 points, and they come up against these big teams. And yeah, maybe you would have liked the United one to be a draw and Newcastle one at least a draw, but it's not that bad when you break it down like that. And actually, this is a Spurs side that when they come up against teams that they should beat, well, they do beat them. They might not beat them well, but they do beat them.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. The things I would say in these results, apart from maybe the West Ham game, they were kind of beaten quite well in terms of performance. Chelsea, won. Arsenal could have got more. Man United could have got more. Newcastle, I think, had a few chances at the end as well.
Even that West Ham game, they played pretty poor for large periods of that game. That is the concern, and that is really the concern. Even when they've in the games that they've been winning, actually the performances. haven't been brilliant. I think for me, let's see when Kulusevski's back. I, I
They
I
need
find it
missing.
hard to believe that he is the centerpiece of this team. That him being out has changed them so significantly that this is the result. But
Yeah.
look, if he comes back and they start, banging in goals again for fun, then I think we can truly put this to bed.
I'm glad you brought him up because I was thinking the other day, like they really do miss him. So he's the only player in the team that kind of links midfield to a forward. He kind of drop back and then drive with the ball forward.
Yeah, and that has been an issue because with him being out, it's been Son that's been dragged into that midfield position, and he's not really much help to the midfield because that's not his game, and you're just taking him away from what he does do well.
Yeah, you need him nearer to the box.
Yeah,
A
just
finisher like
put
that.
him about, put him just on the edge of the box, and you'll probably get goals.
True. So let's look at Bournemouth. So I went through their XG and XG against records. Only got XG once over the one, or that's Southampton. No times they had a higher XG than the opponent. No, and then twice they had XGA against less than one. I think. Yep. Bit of formatting there, but it's we talk about performance with Spurs, and we can talk about performance for Bournemouth. They've done reasonably well. After the smashings they've got, they've won some games. But in terms, it's looking a bit like Spurs, a bit more fluky than anything kind of sustainable in the future.
Yeah, and I sorry, go on,
go for it.
Sean.
No, I'm
I was
finished.
just going to say I think this is the best use of XG. I think in single games XG can be largely useless really at times, but when you look at a team that in every single game it's played has been outperformed XG wise, that's a trend. That's a team that is riding its luck, certainly when you can consider the points that they have attained so far this season. And I've mentioned it on the show that in previous weeks that we still don't know who the hell this team is. Like they don't really have an identity in the way they play. They just seem to be a side that, look, if we could just keep the opposition down to 1, maybe 2 goals, and we'll nick a goal from a set piece. Kiefer Moore, big man at set pieces, or these long throws. I remember the Arsenal game. That was, their only method of getting the ball into the box was long throws from the left hand side. So
Rory Delap.
yeah, the Rory Delap, and that's why despite the points that they have picked up in this early part of the season, for me, I still see them as a side that's just nailed on to go down. I just don't see how they're going to continue picking up that many points playing like this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's always a worrying sign when your XG against and your XG are not in your favor, right? It's just it's bound to level out the playing field of a whole season. So I think it's quite interesting that we picked Spurs and Bournemouth in terms of two teams our game results, but performance wise, even by stats wise, are not there. Be interested to see end of the season if which way it goes. Will they ride their luck the whole season, or is that even luck if that's the whole season, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't expect this to last over the season. If it does last over the season like this, then perhaps we need new models.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. We'll come back to the slide in a couple months. Let's go to Man City, Leicester. All the models suggest Man City was going to rush them, but Leicester kept a tight ship, really. All you really a Kevin De Bruyne special free kick. He's been doing that a few times this season, like special goals. Like he's not scoring normal goals, is he?
Nah, that's just the player that he's really developed into. And I will talk a little bit more about him, but yeah, Leicester defended well in this game, much to Guardiola's annoyance. He doesn't like sides that set up very defensively when they've got very good attacking players. He was letting Maddison know all about that, but it's an interesting case study in Manchester City because this is the first Premier League game, I believe, without Erling Haaland
starting it.
So, um, good to see that they still get the 3 points. They still got the job done. It was a little nervy at the end, maybe. Leicester. I think if you ask Leicester, how do you want this game to go? I think this is probably the way they would have wanted it to go.
Yeah, pre-game.
They defended pretty well. Man City didn't create too many like sharp chances. I think the front three had, I think, one shot between them for Manchester City. Everything came from, well, De Bruyne, really. And we look at De Bruyne's performance in this game. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. He had obviously got the winning goal, but he had nine shot creating actions, 4 key passes. I mean, I could have picked progressive passes. I could have picked progressive carries. I think he had 4 shots as well. He had the most shots on the team. It's so eye-opening that, like I said, on a day where the talisman, certainly goal scoring wise, is out, Captain De Bruyne steps up, because I think he's just the leader of this team. I think when I think Manchester City, I think De Bruyne.
Yeah.
I think he just epitomizes what this team is all about, what Guardiola football is all about. And, on a day where Man City don't have it all their own way, he's the guy that bails them out. And the goal was utterly ridiculous. I mean, that's about as top corner as a shot can be.
Yep. And he's just that kind of special player in terms of he can drive into all these kind of positions, 8 positions, these zonal areas. I quite like that Guardiola's gave him that kind of role in attack. And like you said, we've seen it time and time again. It's like he's so good, like you kind of forget how good he is because he does it all the time.
Yeah, and there'll be weeks where he kind of doesn't do much. I don't know. I think he does still do a lot. I think if we were talking about any other player, we'd say, "Oh man, what a performance!" But it's just like that's an off week for De Bruyne, and it is. Sometimes you just need a game like this to kind of remind you of what he's all about and what this team's all about.
I was also thinking this week about my all-time Premier League like squad or 11. I was thinking how many players of the current kind of generation or last, let's say 3 or 4 years. I've got to say I'm probably will put De Bruyne in, especially comparing Roy Keane's post goals. I think he's earned that right. His performance has never dipped for City, and he's just a phenomenal player. He reminds me a bit of Beckham sometimes, but sometimes a bit of Steven Gerrard. He also does the work rate, and phenomenal player. So annoying to see.
I think you're bang on about that all time. I think the only thing that ever kind of holds you back with modern players is, okay, but will they have the longevity? You think of like all those Man United guys. Part of the reason you pick them in your teams is because they played at a high level for the best part of 15 years.
Yeah,
De Bruyne's about halfway there, but I don't see him ever leaving Man City.
Nah.
Like I don't think there's kind of a higher place to go. He doesn't strike me as a guy that would go to Real Madrid or a Barcelona. Certainly not Barcelona. I couldn't see him at Barcelona.
Yeah.
I think this is his team at Man City. More than Guardiola, I think this is Kevin De Bruyne's team. I think he's such a good player. Love him.
Too good. Well, why couldn't you go to somewhere else?
Well, he did. He failed at Chelsea before that.
True.
Chelsea failed him.
Yeah, must have. Mourinho failed him.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Brendan Rodgers. I think a few weeks ago, we were quite worried for Brendan Rodgers. One game results, bottom of the table, had 1 point after, was it 6, 7, 8 games? But last 6 weeks, he's definitely turned it around. Only 3 goals conceded, which is joint first in the last 6 weeks. 4 clean sheets, first in the Premier League. 7.17 means they've rode their luck a little bit. But I think if you watch the games, they definitely deserve their luck in terms of they're putting a shift in, and you can see there 7 games in, they're 20th with 1 point. Now 6 games after that, they're 6 in the last 6 game weeks. If we had that league, they'd be 6 with 10 points. So there's a massive transformation, and fair play to Leicester board as well, because it could have been easy to kind of dismiss him there.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point. I think it would have been quite easy to dismiss Brendan Rodgers a couple of times early in the season where things seemed to be getting away from him, but he deserves a lot of credit for being able to pull it back like this.
Mm-hmm.
And you do learn a lot about, managers in tough times.
True.
Leicester players, you didn't hear any Leicester players going out and having a moan. They weren't saying, the tactics are not good enough, anything like that. And I think, the way they've been able to turn it around shows that the players probably did always back him.
Mm-hmm. A slight adjustments here and there, and he's got the team running quite well.
Yeah, and I think that's been part of the problem for Leicester. There's been a few too many kind of changes. I don't think the shape has always, benefited them. I don't think it's played to their strengths in the side.
Yeah,
they've gone back to the 4 at the back now, I think, and it just seems to suit them a lot better. I know it seems counterintuitive when a side that concedes a lot of goals, remove a defender out of the team, but
yeah,
it gives a better balance, I think, to that Leicester. Because prior to that, Leicester for a side that they were either going forward or being countered.
True.
They were really finding it hard to get a grip of games and control them.
Well done to Brendan Rodgers. Let's take a look at the rest of the weeks. Those are 4 key games. Let's start with, obviously, done Leicester, Bournemouth. Let's start with Brentford Wolves. I never look forward to Wolves games. I never really want to watch them. Even the highlights are quite boring. But Brentford, again, Tony had a good chance. 1-1. Guess doesn't really tell much of a story. But Wolves are picking up points. I think they're only few points behind Leicester City at the bottom table, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it's, they're at least stacking games together where they score a goal.
Yeah.
It's still not, fantastic. It still doesn't, I think, sort of speak to the quality of their attacking players. I think there's way more potential in that team from an attacking point of view. But Brentford can be one of those odd teams. I don't think you ever look at a fixture list and think, "Oh no, we've got Brentford this week."
True.
I think you always fancy it, but they will. There will just be those weeks where they just
turn up.
They just turn up and just completely outplay a team and outplay a top team. They did it to United earlier in the season. They've done it to Chelsea last season. They've done it to Arsenal last season. They can turn it on, and these are the kind of games where you get a little frustrated. Maybe as a Brentford fan, you think, we need 3 points here. We've shown we're a good team. We can mix it with anyone really on our day.
Mm-hmm. True.
Let's get that consistency going a bit.
They've got a bit of Southampton vibes, not in terms of Southampton. Sometimes they get absolutely crushed.
The hot and cold aspect, yeah.
The hot and cold aspect. You're not really sure which Brentford you're going to get, I would say, every week.
Yeah, and Tony kind of epitomizes that as well.
Yeah,
because he can either turns into prime Ronaldo or prime Altidore.
Whoa, what a comparison that is. Speaking of other teams that are hot cold, Crystal Palace, Southampton. Crystal Palace, they had a hard start, and we kind of give them benefit of that, maybe because of last season. But I still haven't seen, especially with that kind of squad. I like the Vieira squad that he's kind of assembled, but I haven't really seen anything more from them. I expected a better attacking output with the players they had. It hasn't seemed to be flowing yet. Zaha doesn't seem to be in the game sometimes.
Yeah, I think they are kind of, struggling for goals considering their quality in attack. I think you're right on that, and I think they needed just a few games like Southampton at home. Mm. They have Wolves at home a few, and I think a Leeds game at home as well. And I've watched them quite a bit recently, and it when you watch them, they're a very nice side to watch.
Yeah.
They pass the ball around really, really well. They get into attacking areas very, very well. I think there's a little bit of rawness in some of their players at times going forward. Elise, who can be so, so dangerous, can just be a little wasteful at times and can, get dispossessed in bad situations. But yeah, I think they need a few more games like this. I think they just needed points on the board, because I think the deeper you get into the season and you're kind of hovering above that bottom three, you start to get a little bit desperate for points.
True. More pressure, probably less playing the way they want to play, a bit more rushed. We'll see how that goes. And Southampton, as we mentioned, Brightford before, you don't know what you're gonna get, but they create more chances this game. Joe Adams is also one of those strikers, a bit like Ollie Watkins. He'll have a few good goals here and there, but then when it comes to the chances in the big moments, sometimes lost his lines.
Yeah, and they got a great result against Arsenal, Southampton, without really doing much. It's a weird sort of game. They just done a really good job of stopping Arsenal playing through them in the second half of that game.
Yeah.
Arsenal could not get anything going, but they seem to lack that identity. I think they've been missing some of their signings that they made in the summer as well. That's not helped.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just need to find themselves again.
Speaking of a team that don't need to find themselves, Newcastle 4-0. They are ramping it up. This is probably third or fourth game they scored more than 3 goals, and the team's on fire. Even with some injuries in the team, like Isaac and stuff. They're rampant. And Aston Villa, I thought last week they performed quite well, so I thought maybe they'd be more challenged. A bit of a bounce, but Newcastle's stopped that right in the tracks.
Yeah, I just think Newcastle is a team you don't want to play right now.
No.
And the thing is with Newcastle, they are playing way above the kind of talent level, if you like. No disrespect, they have got some really good players in that side, but it's just the confidence that they're playing with, and everyone just seems happy. That the whole place is just happy. Newcastle games used to be
Oh yeah.
The crowd used to be on the players' backs, on the manager's back. They hated Mike Ashley.
It used to be just Sir Maximin, and that's it. He got the
Yeah,
ball,
and
everyone got excited, and that's it.
yeah, and then there was just a lot of groaning and anger. But actually, it's just real positive atmosphere around that club, and it's good for Newcastle fans because they've had a few kind of false dawns over the past 20 years, really. But
Yeah.
I think they're a big club. I think they're a club that belongs towards the top of English football.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and no one kind of epitomizes more than Miggy, Miguel Mirion.
Yeah,
I swear, every goal he scores is amazing.
And he was a guy that was so frustrating to watch before that, because you could see that there was a talent there, but he spends half his time falling over for no reason whatsoever, or just trying a bit too much at times. But he's found a real sweet spot right now, and Newcastle are riding that wave.
True. With Aston Villa, I guess the last game they were managerless, I think. And now they got Unai Emery. What's your thoughts about him back?
Well, I thought he had a bit of a tough hand at Arsenal. Not just following, a legend, but we didn't have our recruitment team sorted by then. It was all a bit chaotic. It was all a bit messy. I think some of the signings we made were not players that he vouched for. But he, and in the second season, he did lose the dressing room. That was the big thing, and it just got to a point, where you're giving up 20 shots a game to the Southamptons and the Watfords of the world. It's something has to change.
Yeah,
but I do think he's a top manager.
I mean, you don't win that many Europa Leagues and not be a top manager, right? And he's done.
Yeah,
well
I just think with Arsenal, I think there was a misidentification of where that club was at that time. I think there was a belief that we were just needed a couple of players and a bit more stability to get back into the top four. But actually, we were a little bit rotten
True.
from the inside and needed to be gutted.
Do you reckon Aston Villa is a good job for him? They've got money behind the project, got some decent players too, and I think Emery kind of works well with these kind of mid-table players like Enzonzi, those kind of
Yeah,
players.
I think that's the thing. I think top clubs, I don't think he can at times fully embrace his kind of style. I think as a manager, he's a lot better in a backs to the wall kind of situation. I don't think he's comfortable with a side that's expected to have 60% possession on a weekly basis. I think it's more suited to him, but we'll see. It's been their signings haven't been great at Aston Villa.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think
that needs to improve.
Yeah, that does definitely.
Let's go to Fulham Everton 0-0, but this was a feisty game. So some flying tackles. Mitrovic was very lucky to be sent off again.
Yeah, Fulham have a bunch of those players. Palhinha loves getting stuck in as well, and
that's true.
They played really well in this game. They created a lot of chances. Pickford was in great form for Everton, and week to week, I just started to believe a bit more in Fulham.
Yeah,
because they've had weeks where they have a bad result, a really poor performance or something, but they do seem to bounce back and pick up points again. They don't seem to go on these runs where they just they just lose sense of themselves. So I do think now of the three teams that came up, they're the best place to stay here.
Yeah, especially attacking wise. Yeah. I think they can score against anybody. I would even argue they can probably score against City and Arsenal. In terms, I guess they did score against Arsenal, but yeah, their attacking front, even with Mitrovic, but even Andres Pereira, Cabano, these players are threatening, to any team really, and they were unlucky to score this game. But the flip side is defensively, they do have gaps, and they can be got at.
Yeah, and it's nice to play an Everton side that themselves kind of struggle to score goals at times. They, it's I don't know whether this is a good result for Everton. They might have earmarked this as one that they felt they might be able to take 3 from, but I think this is who Everton are. I think their aim is over the 38 games this season. If they can keep it to kind of a 1-score game, 1 score either level late on, things like that they might be able to nick results.
True.
But, they're not going to outplay many teams or, out XG a great number of teams this season. I just think that's where they are. And I think Lampard's doing a good job of managing to that side, because I was worried he was going to go in there and try to implement this philosophy that was just not what that side needs right now.
Yeah, he definitely was more pragmatic with his approach, which is good to see, because we were a bit worried for him. A team that we're not worried about, Arsenal, 5-0, and it was a blistering performance. Even with Saka got injured off, Reece Nelson came in and put in a good a goal and an assist, 2 goals and assists.
2 goals and an assist for Reece Lightning. Love to see it. Things you love to see. But it is always concerning when you see Saka hobbling off.
Yeah.
Honestly, it felt like a funeral for a couple of minutes. You have Saka slowly walking off, and everyone, I mean everyone on the Arsenal team is stopping by, to make sure he's all right, kind of thing. And the whole crowd has been like, "Oh no, Saka's injured," but hopefully not too serious. Which, to be honest, is the most important aspect of this performance, because it was very one-sided. Once Arsenal scored the second just after half-time, it was game over. And it was nice to see Arsenal actually just seem to have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah.
Too often in the last couple of years, we kind of go 2 or 3 goals up, and then we just sort of stop, and there's been some nervy endings to those sort of games that's just been completely unnecessary when you dominate a game for 75 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just put Forest to the sword in this one, and for Forest's side, look, you lose at the Emirates. That's not the end of the world. I think they'll be concerned that they're just leaking goals at a really, really bad rate at the moment.
To be fair, the last couple of games, well, I guess Liverpool, what was the game before that? They kept 2 clean sheets, correct? I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
there were signs that they maybe be better defensively, but maybe they were just 2 aberrations, really.
I think it could be that. And to be fair, in a lot of games, Dean Henderson does seem to have bloody good performances for
True.
Forest, but yeah, they're a little too easy to play through.
Yeah, especially with the 5-man
And
defense.
yeah,
that
and
should never be the case.
I think a big issue for them is Lingard has really not got going at all. And yet he starts week in, week out. I know he's kind of the big marquee signing, or
Yeah.
was at the time he signed, but they're getting a lot more from Morgan Gibbs White. I think they need to look at other players for a bit, because it's not really happening with Jesse Lingard.
Yeah, very true. Talk about his former team, Man United.
Yep, and West Ham.
Oh yeah, and West Ham. Yeah, Lingard Ball. Yeah, we have definitely have seen an improvement from Man United. I think Ten Hag
Big time.
Came in, and I think the first thing he spotted was defense. It's a bit worrying with Varane injured, because that back four of Luke Shaw, Varane, Martinez, and Dalot look very good against all teams. With Varane, it's not going to be as good. But this game, I watched this game. Obviously, the West Ham didn't really offer much in attack. I know there's 1xG, but it was all half chances, and we defended quite well. Maybe the last few minutes were a bit nervy, but we handled it pretty well. Like,
I think the thing I've noticed with Manchester United, certainly since the early stages of the season, is that they actually don't mind doing a bit of defending. Early this season, and for honestly most of last season as well, they just looked like a side that as soon as the ball got near their box, it was a little bit panic stations. But actually, they're quite happy week to week to definitely for periods of games just sit in and just soak it up. Nothing gets in behind him. Martinez has been a very good signing at centre back. De Gea, since that blunder at Brentford, has been very solid as well.
Quite good with his feet recently as well. I'm very surprised.
I've noticed him clipping some balls out, and
yeah,
that's all he really needs to do.
it doesn't need to be Edison.
Not asking him to start doing what Alisson does, and Cruyff turning players. I don't want to ever see goalkeepers doing that. But just those little half-field dinks, where you can just swing it out to the left back or right back, or the winger in quick transitions. That's all you need from a sort of ball playing keeper, if you like.
And he's even coming out now. Like, that was one big criticism for me. Even
he stayed on his line.
He stayed on his line even for one-on-ones. But this game, I remember there was a ball going towards, I think, Antonio, and he was running out. I was, the hell, what are you doing here? But it worked out, and he's done really well. I'm very happy with him. He's been a great servant for our club. He's got some stick at times, because he's not the modern keeper, let's say. But he's making some great saves. Even this game, I think Declan Rice smacked it. It could have gone in, but that's Dave saved.
Yeah, that last minute save, very nice. And it does seem a little bit like that most weeks for Manchester United. It seems to get a little bit too tense.
Mm-hmm.
The bum gets a little too clenched for United fans at the end of games. And I just think it's just it shows the team's not completely all there yet. This is a team that I just think they're working with what they've got. And I'll give Ten Hag credit. It'd be very easy to just go in and say, well, this is the philosophy we're going to go, and if we lose games, well, we're just going to have to get better at playing this style. He's kind of just said, okay, what are we good at? What are we not so good at? Let's try and sort of play to our strengths here and try and win as many games as we can. And they dragged themselves right up the table. And in a year where Chelsea are kind of what we thought they might be,
Mhm.
Liverpool got worse than what we thought. Spurs, the performances haven't been great. They might be a side that could maybe be an outside shot for top four.
Yeah, I definitely reckon so. Like, I'm quite positive about this team. You know, I'm glad Ten Hag chose defense to focus on first. I know we're playing inverted fullbacks now, so they're not so high up. We've got more people behind the ball. If a break does occur, Casemiro's come in and actually looked like to himself at Real Madrid. That's always good to see. But yeah, we are lacking control against these low blocks, creating chances. Rashford, obviously scoring headers now too. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah,
Two
you do get
games.
the Marcus Rashford experience every game.
Yeah.
Where he'll miss a great chance, he'll lose the ball in spectacularly annoying positions when he could just find a teammate or something. But he is also capable of great moments. That header came out of nowhere,
He's been doing it for the last few weeks. He's been getting a lot of good header chances.
which
Uh,
is good to see. It's good to
yeah.
see because you don't want him to be one dimensional, and
Mm.
he's just playing with a lot more confidence. I jest about the losing the ball because actually it's just
Confidence, yeah. It's
at
taking a
least he's
man
got
on.
that confidence. Last season he just looked lost. It was hard to watch.
Yeah. Good for England too. In terms of West Ham, quickly, just not. I know West Ham are better defensively. Never been that kind of attacking thrust, but they got to get something going, especially with the players they have. Especially Skamaka's come in, Antonio's coming off the bench now. They're not playing together, even if they need a goal.
Yeah, this is a big issue. They're just not scoring goals, and you're
Not
right. They've
creating,
got
right? As well.
Yeah, and they've got way too much talent to be that team. Um, and it was kind of why I was worried about Skamaka. It was a lot of expectation on him to kind of carry the scoring load, and that hasn't quite happened yet. And also, guys like Bowen, his form's kind of dropped off a cliff. So it's putting even more pressure on Skamaka.
Mhm.
And don't know when was the last time he scored.
All right, guys. Well, that was our weekend wrap of Game Week 14. Just 2 more game weeks to the World Cup. It's gonna be quite exciting times. A lot of players hopefully don't have too much of their mind at the World Cup and start going full out, maybe. Hopefully, but we'll see. Anyway, ciao.
Thanks, guys.